He lives in a big, noisy and crowded city with a busy rhythm of life. But he is interested in another world. A world with no fuss, where a person lives preserving the heritage of his ancestors and the precepts of nature. Konstantin Kuksin, an ethnographer, traveler, a current member of the Russian Geographical Society, as well as the founder and director of the Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow. Nomads of the Great Steppe are his favorite topic, and he can talk about it for hours.
Про кочевую цивилизацию.
About the nomadic civilization that, like a patchwork quilt, covers our planet. We will talk about all of this on the sacred land of Ulitau. Welcome to Ulitau. Konstantin Kuksin in the new season of Dala Project.
В истории каждого народа, каждой
The
цивилизации
history of every nation, every civilization has the so-called Dark Ages. They are called dark not because it was scary and bad back then, but because we historians have little information about this time. For example, everyone knows the history of Egypt from the time of pharaohs, but not many know what happened in Egypt in the 15th or 18th centuries. The history of the Great Steppe is no exception. There is probably not a soul in the world that doesn't know of Genghis Khan and his great empire. People interested in the steppe history will of course remember the great Turkic tribes and the Xiongnu state. But the Turks, Huns and Mongols were not the only great powers in the steppe. There were other nations as well. For example, Oguz nation.
например, Огузы. Muhtar Bakhtuli,
Mukhtar Bakhtuli, historian, writer and researcher of nomadic civilization, will help me shed light on the dark ages of the steppe history. Where did the story of Oguzes begin?
Огузы. С чего началась их история?
Но Огузская династия, она берет начало от...
The Oguz dynasty started with the legendary Oguz Kagan, who lived around 2nd century BC. This period, the events of that time may seem dark to the general public, but the scientific community has a good knowledge of it. Rashid al-Din wrote in detail about Oguz Kagan's birth, his marriage, and his conquests.
Очень подробно расписал о его рождении, о его женитьбе, о его завоеваниях.
Давайте да.
Let's talk in more detail about the life of this great man.
Да. Вот, он является сыном Карахана. Карахан
He is the son of Karakan. Karakan was a very powerful ruler who lived near Ortak and Kertak, that is, Ulitau and Kishitau mountains, meaning in our area. He had an extraordinary son. When he was born, he quickly stopped suckling on his mother's breast. The mother was worried. On the 3rd day, he spoke like a grown man. This correlates with Isa, or Jesus, who started speaking when he was a baby. Little Oguz said, "I was born a Muslim." Muslimism and Islam here mean different things. Islam is the completion of Muslimism, and Muslimism began with Adam.
Мусульманство начиналось от Адама.
Let's call it monotheism.
И вот когда он сказал: «Я мусульманин, и тебе надо просто принять мусульманство», только тогда я буду...
He said, "I am a Muslim, and you have to become Muslim yourself for me to be able to suckle at your breast." In those days, idolatry was practically the ideology of this powerful nomadic empire. A son would kill his father, and a father would kill his son if anyone uncovered a case of Islam worship in his family. Islam worship was very severely punished. So the mother, at her own risk, adopted Islam Islam and monotheism. After that, the boy managed to survive. According to the Turkic tradition, a child is given a name only when he or she turns 1. They want to first understand his character, habits, and give the name in accordance with them. When Oguz was turning 1, his father Karakan called a huge gathering. At this feast, people were offering their ideas of the name, when Oguz came running and said, "My name is Oguz. I have come to be your king."
Но в это время Огуз прибежал, и он сказал, что «Меня зовут Огуз. Я пришел для того, чтобы стать вашим великим царем».
What does Oguz mean?
Имя Огуз означает «Огыз», то есть след стрелы.
The name Oguz means Ogiz, that is, the trail of an arrow. A person with this name is swift, fast, and powerful. When Oguz grew up, his father decided it was time for him to marry. At that time, the royal tradition was to marry the daughter of a cousin or a nephew, that is, someone from the same bloodline. So he got married. They had a big feast. On the very first night, Oguz told his bride, "You need to convert to Islam." The woman said, "If I will be exposed, I will be killed. So I'm sorry, I don't need problems. Neither I, nor my parents, nor my family will bear such a disgrace." Karakan saw that something was wrong and decided to find him another wife. Oguz married for the second time, and the same thing happened. She also refused to convert to Islam. Karakan started worrying. He needed an heir, but it did not work out with either the first or the second wife. So he says to his son, "Listen, choose for yourself. Whichever one you like, you can marry her." Once a group of women was washing clothes on the coast of a river. Oguz liked one of them, a beautiful girl. He said to her, "I am a Muslim. In order to be my wife, you need to convert to Islam." And well, as they say, love conquers all, the girl said, "For you, I'm ready to do anything, even die." Such is the legend of Oguz Kagan.
Он сказал: «Я мусульманин. Для того, чтобы быть моей женой, тебе надо принять мусульманство». Ну, как говорится, любовь сделала свое дело. Девушка сказала: «Ради тебя готова на все, даже на смерть».
Mukhtar. Marriages to relatives, sisters, cousins was a common tradition among Zoroastrians. Iranians believed that this was the best form of marriage. At the same time, classical Islam forbids it, as far as I know. But this story happened in the pre-Islamic period, the 2nd century BC. This type of story is common. We can find it in the Shahnameh and even in the history of the life of Buddha. But here the emphasis is on the fact that he chooses not a relative, but a simple girl, who nonetheless converts to monotheism.
Да, именно на религиозной составляющей делается оценка, потому что это станет еще и в будущем идеологией для расширения империи Огuz Kagan. Вот. После этого...
Yes, the emphasis is on the religious component, because in the future it will become an ideology for expanding the empire. So one time, when Prince Oguz went hunting, Karakan got curious. He wondered what was wrong with those two. And so he summoned the first 2 wives and asked them different questions. They told him, "You don't know your son." "What is it?" he asked. "He is a Muslim," they said. Karakan was horrified. "Shame," he uttered. At that time, the only course of action was the death penalty, meaning he had to kill Oguz. The third wife, hearing about this, sent one of her servants to Oguz to warn him. When the servant alerted Oguz, Oguz announced to the whole empire that his father had declared a war on him. "He who is with me is a Muslim. Muslims join me. He who is with my father is for idolatry. Go to him." And to his surprise, many people joined him. It turned out that Islam had secret supporters. In the final battle, however, the Almighty was on the side of Oguz. His troops defeated the troops of Karakan. Rashid al-Din writes that an arrow hit Karakan in the head. He was rescued from the battlefield, but he died, and his burial place is unknown.
Войска Карахана, и при этом Рашид ад-Дин пишет о том, что Карахану в голову попала стрела, и его или спасли с поля боя, и он умер, и дальнейшая его судьба неизвестна.
Хотя колесо истории...
Although the wheel of history spins non-stop, sometimes its trail is almost invisible, especially if the wheel rolls around a dry rocky steppe. This is what happened to the Oguz people.
С агузами.
Да, но в то время этот народ назывался мугульский народ.
At that time, this people was called the Mongols. Rashid al-Din writes about them as Mongols, and the Oguzes lived in the 8th century AD. They were called Oguz because the descendants of Oghuz Kagan were in power. He started building his empire based on Islam. First, he reunited two large ethnic groups, Mongol and Tatar. The Mongols lived in the Kazakh steppes, while the Tatars lived on the territory of modern Mongolia. And Oguz managed to reunite these two tribes and strengthen the nomadic state.
Воссоединить и укрепить кочевое государство.
I heard that the Oguz fought not only in China and Tibet, but also conquered Egypt.
Кстати, вот в походе на Тибет, когда они брали один из крепостей, горных крепостей.
This reminds me, during a campaign to Tibet, when they took one of the fortresses, one of his closest friends died. His wife became pregnant during the campaign, and when they were approaching China, it was time for her to give birth. This happened in the steppe. There was nothing around. There were also only men around. So she began looking for a place to give birth and saw a dry tree with a hollow. The hollow in the ancient Turkic language was Kipchak. She climbed into this hollow and gave birth to a son. Oguz found out about the whole story and said, I will name this child Kipchak. Since his father was my close friend and confident, I will raise this boy myself.
Ребенка я назову Капчак. И так как его отец был близким моим соратником, доверенным лицом, я этого сына воспитаю сам.
Remember, Oghuz Kagan lived here, in the land of Ulatau, right here, where we are sitting now. And his horses galloped on the same steppe grass.
Колесо истории вращается...
The wheel of history spins non-stop, and once great empires turn to dust. Only mounds over the graves of warriors remind us of the great events of the past. What happened to the Oghuz Khaganate in the end?
Огузский каганат, сформированный на огромных территориях Евразии, был разделен после всех этих завоевательных походов.
The Oghuz Khaganate that once prospered on the vast territories of Eurasia was divided. It was a big territory. Oguz conquered Persia, Syria, Baghdad, and even Egypt. His army was divided among 6 sons into Buzok and Ushok. Buzok translates as a broken bow, and Ushok as 3 arrows. He ordered his vizier to hide a golden bow somewhere in the west and 3 arrows somewhere in the east, but their tips should be visible. After that, he called for his 3 eldest sons and sent them to the west. Go hunting in the west. I heard that there is a lot of game. After sending them out hunting, he called for his 3 younger sons and told them to hunt in the east. The older brothers stumbled upon a bow. They were talking over with each other what to do with this bow and decided to break the bow into 3 parts, and each will take a piece for himself. and the younger brothers found 3 arrows. All the sons returned to Oguz and told him about their findings. He said, "The Almighty Himself distributed our tribes among you, my heirs." Addressing the elders, he said, "The 3 of you will lead a branch, a part of the empire, which will be called Buzok. Buz means to break. Ok means an arrow. And Ush-Ok part, which means 3 arrows, will be under the rule of the younger sons." Oguz sent Kipchak, the boy he was raising alongside his own children, to the steppe, where he founded Dasht-i Kipchak. Oguz spent his last days living a simple shepherd's life, which is not characteristic of such great rulers. His grave may be somewhere in Ulitau. Before his death, he appointed Kun Khan as the eldest among his 6 sons. The eldest sons were Kun, Ai, and Joldiz. When Kun Khan took over after the death of Oguz, he began referring to his closest associates, the so-called Ataliks. Atalik is derived from the word Ata, meaning grandfather. Ataliks are the comrade-in-arms of the previous Kagan who passed on. They give instructions and advice based on the experience of governing the state.
Он, соответственно, начал ссылаться на ближайших соратников, так называемых аталыков. Аталыки – это от слова «ата»,
Отец.
то есть дед.
Дед.
Да. Аталык – это соратники Кагана, который ушел в тот мир, который дает наставление на основе опыта.
So they are comrades, military generals of the father. They are advisors to the new rulers.
Напомню нашим телезрителям, что речь идет о
We remind our viewers that we are talking about the 2nd, 1st centuries BC, the same era as the era of the Xiongnu. At this time, the Han dynasty ruled over China. Emperor Augustus ruled over Rome. Jesus, or Isa, was born in Palestine in the Roman province of Syria. This is to help you understand the moment in time when Oguz Kagan and his descendants lived.
Срез времени, когда жил Огуз Каган и его потомки.
И был такой, который и стал главным советником Кунхана. Он сказал, что среди внуков Огуз Кагана уже, то есть внуков Огуз Кагана уже 24. И среди этих 24 внуков необходимо распределить.
One of the Ataliks became the main advisor to Kun Khan. He noted that there are already 24 grandchildren of Oguz Kagan, and so he needs to distribute the land among all of them in order to avoid infighting and fragmentation of the empire. In this way, they managed to maintain the stability of the empire in the vast expanses of Eurasia that stretched from Irgiz, modern-day Jaik or Ural River, to Issyk-Kul Lake. This land was already called the land of Oguz people in written sources. Rashid al-Din and Abul Ghazi wrote about this. After Kun Khan agreed with his vizier Irkil Koja, he was advised to convene a big gathering, serve a feast and distribute all these roles. The eldest son of Kun Khan, Kai, was named the next heir. There is still a Kai tribe living in Asia Minor. Kai translates from the ancient Turkic as strong. The traces of the word Kai in the modern-day Kazakh language were preserved in the word Kayis, which is a well-processed leather used to make bridles and saddle straps. Kai was sitting in the most honorable place, to the right side of Kun Khan. The 24 grandchildren were divided into 6 main ulayats, that is, 6 regions. 4 in each yurt. That is, yurts were set up and each of the grandchildren were seated according to their positions. When the lamb meat was distributed, the most honorable, for example, Kai, was given a shoulder blade. His younger brother got the honor of cutting the meat. Kipchak was standing at the door and Kalash was holding the horse. Thus was the way the roles in the state were distributed. Someone got a shoulder blade, someone got a femur, someone got to cut the meat, someone got the honor of standing at the door, and someone got the honor of taking care of horses.
Держал лошадь. То есть таким образом были распределены роли в государстве. То есть кто-то ест лопатку, кто-то бедренную часть кости, кто-то режет это мясо и так далее. То есть кто-то имеет честь стоять у порога, а кто-то имеет честь держать лошадей.
So everyone got a worthy
В
role.
основном держали лошадей калаш, кипчак, канклы, которые тоже...
The horses were mainly taken care of by Kalash, Kipchak and Kangli, the one who invented the cart because there was so much gold when they returned from China that it was impossible to carry it. This is when he came up with a four-wheeled arba, the Kazakh arba. When the cart loaded with silver and gold trophies was moving, it made the kank, kank, kank sound. This is why there is a tribe called Kangli, at least according to Oguz name. There is another version that the word Kangli was derived from the word Kan, Kanli, meaning of Kan's blood.
Точка, что канклы это от слова хан, канлы или же ханской крови и так далее.
Когда колесо истории...
When the wheel of history spins across the steppe, dust rises, and in this dust, it is difficult to see the faces of individuals. Mukhtar, you mentioned such prominent people as Kalash and Karluk. Where did they come from? What do these names mean?
переводятся.
Во время походов Огуз Кагана из Китая в Персию, это примерно вот афганские горы, да, Памир, Алатау, может быть, то есть он очень много ходил по этим горным местностям, подчиняя эти эли.
During the campaigns of Oguz Kagan from China to Persia, he traveled a lot through mountainous areas of Pamir and Dala, subduing the tribes that lived there. There were cases when a group of people lagged behind the main army. When they counted the troops, it turned out that some squad was missing. They proceeded with the campaign, and at some point this squad caught up with them. And then Oguz asked what happened, why they fell behind. They said that when they crossed the gorge, they fell behind because of an avalanche. And then Oguz said to call the descendants of this squad Karluks. Kar means snow, and ik means protection from the wind. This is how the name of Karliks came about. A similar story happened to a different squad when they fell behind and were forced to eat their horses. Oguz said to call their offspring Kalash. Kal means stay and Ash means hungry, so staying hungry. These ethnonyms are explained in Oguz's name and Jami al-Tawarik by Rashid al-Din. Later they were duplicated by chroniclers of the late Middle Ages. These ethnonyms, Kalash, Karlik, Kipchak, Uyghur, were formed precisely under Oguz Kagan. This information is given both in Persian and Chinese sources.
Вот эти этнонимы Калаш, Карлык, Кыпчак, Уйгур, они сформировались именно при Огузе. И вот эти первые сведения, которые даются и в персидских источниках, и в китайских источниках, они соотносятся именно с этим временем.
Well, after all, legends always complement and embellish historical sources.
Да, как писал Чингисхан в Ясы,
as Genghis Khan wrote in Yassi, if three wise men repeat the same thing, we can talk about it. And if three wise men did not say this, it is better to refrain from discussing it. Genghis Khan's statements fully correspond to modern scientific criteria. It is a surprisingly quiet evening today in the Ulutau steppe. And it seems that there has always been such silence and calm. Seems only sheep and horses grazed here. But now we know that this is not the case. Grandiose events that determined the fate of the whole world took place here.